Dr. Johan Rockström is a professor at Stockholm University and the executive director of Stockholm Resilience Center. He is an internationally recognized scientist on global sustainability matters. He is sometimes referred to as the rock star of sustainability. Dr. Rockström, thank you very much for your time today. In recent years, sustainability has been a buzzword, and we here in Japan hear the word quite often. But not many people seem to know what exactly sustainability means. Could you define or explain in layman's terms what sustainability and sustainable development mean?
Yes, thank you, and thanks for inviting me here. And the classical definition of sustainable development is simply to manage our planet and the resources on the planet, from fresh water and quality of air and the soils we produce food from and the oceans we take our fish from, and to manage these in a way that can satisfy our needs while ensuring that next generation has the same ability to satisfy their needs. So it's essentially to understand that we need to take care of everything from local forests to our coastal regions and to our climate system in a way that keeps them functioning on the long term. But today, I would argue that the sustainability definition is changing, because we now, as humanity, we as humans, constitute the largest driver of change at the whole planetary scale. So we have entered a whole new geological epoch, the Anthropocene, where we, as humans, anthros for humans, are the largest force of change, which means that we as scientists have actually advanced a complementary definition of sustainability, which is that we now need to understand sustainability as having human or world development, having our world economy, all our nations and all our well-being and economic growth occurring within the safe operating space of a stable planet. And that could be the more, let's say, correct definition of global sustainability today, that we must now ensure that we stay within the maximum allowed limit for temperature rise on climate, that we no longer lose any more biodiversity, that we do not empty the rivers on fresh water, that we keep ecosystems intact, that we keep the ocean from acidifying, and that these non-negotiable planetary boundaries define a safe operating space. And as long as we stay within that space, we are sustainable. If we go too far outside of them, which risks taking us towards potentially very dangerous situations, potentially even catastrophic, then we are unsustainable. So I think we need to have both these definitions, both our responsibility for next generation, the old definition, but also recognizing that we now need to stay within Earth's safe operating space. I think that gives a good definition of sustainability.
Yes, thank you very much. I understand quite well. And could you give us some examples of unsustainability in our daily life?
There are so many of them, unfortunately, but two that we have learned a lot about is, of course, the number one is that we all want to have good economy, we want to have jobs, we want to have modern societies, but we know today very well that if you would plot the economic growth against energy use, that it's a linear relationship. So to put it simple, the better our economy grows, the more energy we use. Unfortunately, over the past 150 years, since the Industrial Revolution, the way we have powered our economy has been through fossil fuels. So we've been burning oil, coal, and natural gas to power our modern economy. It has delivered tremendously well for those who are, particularly those nations in the world that are richer, but it has done so at the expense of greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere, which has led to global warming, which now is leading to invoices being sent back by the planet in terms of droughts, heat waves, floods, sea level rise, and very, very damaging unsustainable effects. So that's one example of unsustainability, of how we have used an unsustainable path, burning of fossil fuels, to deliver on the short term. So we violate the first definition of sustainability, that we should behave in our generation in a way that does not undermine next generation, but we violate it when we burn fossil fuels. But the other one, which is another kind of classic, is that we need food. And how do we produce food? We'll do that through agriculture. And how does agriculture produce food? Well, it has done so over the past 50 years to a very large extent by expanding agriculture, by cutting down forests and basically transforming natural ecosystems, which leads to loss of species, which leads to loss of carbon, and which leads to degraded land. So we have cheap food. If you go into a store, you can buy meat and bread and all the food items actually at a very low price. Why is it so cheap? Well, it is because the planet pays. Because you and I do not pay for all the trees that are cut down, all the soils that are destroyed, all the fresh water which is polluted. That the planet is simply just suffering from, which in the end we need to pay for, but that comes to the next generation. So the unsustainable food and unsustainable energy are two examples of unsustainable development, which gives us on the short term subsidized well-being, so we kind of give the impression of us having good delivery of services, but in fact it occurs at the expense of sustainability.